At the heart of Christianity is something that disproves this: the origins of our most famous prayer.
Okay. Now, there's one thing they share that is very, very interesting, and this is the prayer Jesus taught his disciples, the Our Father. Let your kingdom come, let your will be done on earth. Give us this day our daily bread. This is the signature prayer that Jesus taught his disciples.
يتقدس اسمك يصير ملكوتك يتبعيلي.
The Gospel of Luke introduces the Lord's Prayer with Jesus' disciples asking him to teach them to pray as John had done.
غفر لي خطيوتك اقبل انا عن خطرين دي احد ليه ولا تعلي لنا حب تغربته.
Now, it's usually understood to mean John taught his disciples to pray, so teach us to pray, maybe like a different prayer. But if you look at the Greek, it can very well imply, teach us that prayer that John taught his disciples. And I think if you look at the elements of the prayer, you can make a very good case that Jesus and John both share this prayer as kind of, I would call it the core of their message. So maybe John first came up with that prayer.
Just a few miles from John's traditional home, there is new physical evidence of the importance of his role in Jesus' life story. In 1999, while conducting a routine archaeological survey, Dr. Shimon Gibson found the opening to an ancient cave.
So, this is the cave of John the Baptist. Wow, please come in.
The cave contains archaeological evidence that it was used for ritual baptism during the time of Jesus and John.
What leads you to believe that this is the cave of John the Baptist?
Well, you can see very faint scratchings in the walls. In fact, these are deeply incised drawings. You can see the figure of John the Baptist, and he's got upraised arms, and he's got the hairy garment which is referred to in the Gospels. That's quite clearly depicted. Then on the other side, you have the head of John the Baptist over here. This actually would then relate to the decapitation, the death of John the Baptist. So in a way, with this symbol, you have the end of the story of John the Baptist in the Gospels.
Can you describe what would have taken place here in the time of John the Baptist?
Well, based on archaeological evidences, I would say that people came through this very large doorway, they walked down a couple of steps, and then they had this kind of earthen embankment. In a way, it was like a bank of a river. And then they would descend into the water itself, and there they could be baptized. They could simply immerse themselves in water. And I'd like to show you something really interesting. If you come up over here, you'll see that on the top of this stone, this is a replica jug which we placed here. But on top of the stone is this groove here. And this groove is in the shape of a right foot, and it's for the placing of the right foot inside. And then a person would take the jug and then pour over the foot the oil and anoint the foot.
Do you feel that there's been an attempt to downplay the role of John and John's work as a baptizer in the New Testament?
Clearly, those who are dealing with the writing of the Gospels are interested in the Jesus story. That's their goal. And they're only interested in John the Baptist insofar as it helps along the story. And of course, there are certain sort of elements there that they want to downplay in order to show that Jesus is the prominent figure and that John the Baptist is the precursor, the one who is waiting there in the wings, preparing everything for the time that Jesus will arrive. But there is an interesting relationship between John and Jesus, and really the career of Jesus only blooms, if I may put it that way, after the death of John the Baptist, that John the Baptist is clearly in command up to that point.
But the Bible editors felt otherwise, and wherever possible, they tried to write John out of the story. This process is most blatant in the biblical accounts of Jesus' baptism.
In those days, Jesus came from Nazareth in Galilee and was baptized by John in the Jordan.
We take the earliest gospel, Mark, and we simply have the recorded fact that Jesus went down to the Jordan and was baptized by John, and he too got the calling, and that's simply all that is said.
In the next gospel, the story is already beginning to change.
Then Jesus came from Galilee to the Jordan to John to be baptized by him. John would have prevented him, saying, "I need to be baptized by you, and do you come to me?"
Although it mentions John baptizing Jesus here in the Jordan River, John is said to protest that he is not worthy of such a task.
And then you get Luke, which is the third in line, and what does he do? He doesn't even mention that John baptized Jesus. It's very subtle.
Now, when all the people were baptized, and when Jesus also had been baptized and was praying, the heavens opened.
And you think, well, wonder who baptized him. And then you get to the fourth stage, which is the latest, Gospel of John, and there's no baptism mentioned at all.
Where John baptized Jesus?
Yes,
This side.
The standard way of looking at it is Jesus is the main character, and he goes out to meet John, and John simply introduces him, almost like on the side of a stage. He says, "Here's Jesus," and then he walks off. But if you understand it in its context, it's actually flipped around. It's the opposite. John is the prophet. In fact, Jesus said, "You think he's a prophet? He's more than a prophet."
So who was greater, Jesus or John?
Same.
They were the same.
Yes.
You think they were the same? They were both prophets. Jesus couldn't be greater than John.
For me, it's the same.
For you, it's the same.
Ever since Jesus was declared God, the church has struggled with the balance between his divine and human natures. And it is the divine that has won out. The losers were John the Baptist